Hello and welcome to the video section of the book where we expand on the chapter and the workbook that you just finished reading. Again, thank you so much for joining us in Outrunning the Light and embarking on your own journey of discovery and promise. And congratulations on making your way through the first chapter and promise number 1, which is I embrace adventure as part of my daily life. You know, although it's the first promise in the book, we begin to explore the possibilities around adventure and the time and effort it takes to do that. I think it's probably one of the most important promises one can make to themselves in search of an exceptional life. If there's only one thing that you do in this whole book, try and embrace adventure as part of your daily life. As we say in the workbook, adventure is often perceived as a distant and unattainable, wrapped in images of perilous expeditions to exotic locales. However, true adventure is not confined to these grand escapades. It's woven into the fabric of our daily lives, waiting to be discovered. In fact, it's anything unusual and exciting, something that pulls you out of your comfort zone and forces you to learn. And on that note, I have a grand adventurer herself today joining us, a friend of mine, Kim Klein, that's been a friend for several years. Hey, Kim, how are you?
I'm great, Todd. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks so much for coming on here. I'm going to do a Kim. Kim, like I said, has been a friend for several years. She is an amazing artist and a designer by nature and trade, and this is somebody that always looking at the aesthetic in life and how to create beauty in everything she touches. So it's just an amazing person, and it's also someone that I felt really embraces this concept of bringing adventure as part of your daily life. We're going to get into that a second here. But it's great to see you again. How was your summer?
Thank you, Todd. It's great to see you. Summer was rather routine, but it involves some college visits with my daughter and getting her situated and working on my house and creating the level of beauty and aesthetic here in the day-to-day life to
Yeah.
provide. But
Well,
all good.
certainly some adventures in part of that as well. And
Absolutely.
we're going to jump right into this. And I'm going to let the audience know right now that one of the big reasons I wanted Kim to be part of this is Kim, I guess we're going to learn more about this a couple of years ago, took on the Camino de Santiago, which is the long distance walking pilgrimage in France. And it starts in different places in France and in Spain. And she took this on. I think it was like a couple hundred miles of walking or so, like that, on the way to Santiago. But what an amazing adventure. Let me ask you, Kim. Here you are, you're sitting here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. You've got the house, you've got the mortgage, you got the kid getting ready for college. What made you think about even taking on such a great adventure as the Camino de Santiago?
Good question. And I'm first of all, I'm going to say I didn't think too much about it. I
Yeah.
the idea and opportunity was proposed, and I'm pretty much like many other things in my life, I've kind of been, dare I say, fly by the seat of my pants. I mean,
Yeah.
there's kind of intention and planning on the backside of exercising the idea and stepping into it. But it wasn't like I sat down and made a list and thinking of places I wanted to go and then, editing from that. It really was born from an invitation from a very good client friend of mine of 30 years and was a strong consideration because I was at a point in my life where I needed to step out of the daily grind and the constraints that were part of, my routine and navigation post-divorce in process of trying to reestablish myself and uprooting in every way from a physical sense, a space and place to even financially, because it was just like um, being brave enough to not know what the implications would be on the back end of having a good chunk of money go to this adventure. And that was just part of what propelled me into it.
Yeah. Well, talk a little bit about I've known you for a while, and I think of you as kind of like an adventurous type of person, but this was way out of the comfort zone, in my opinion. Talk about that a little bit. I mean, was it what you expected, and how far did it take you kind of out of that comfort zone?
Sure. Well, I will say this. I've always traveled with no expectations. I've gone with an open mind. I traveled to India in 2019 for 3 weeks and I went with no expectation. I will confess and admit that I had an expectation with this trip. And dare it sound shallow or insignificant, but I wanted to kind of get in a better place physically. I was somewhat prepared prior to going, walking 5, 7 miles a day, more for my mindset than my physical health. But I wanted to go on this journey to be in the space and place and experience what I could, but also come back a different person. And I know that sounds to minimize the thing. And so I went with that expectation, and everything about that was changed because of the conditions that I encountered, like right away, almost a couple days into the walk. We were dealt with unprecedented temperatures that were so high that they were recorded and talked about, internationally. And we had friends texting us, "Are you guys okay?" I mean, we had 104 degrees, walking
Oh, wow.
on
Yeah.
average, on average 10 miles a day. Some days it was 14, some days it was 8. Um, but I did myself in on the second day. And I know that sounds like we had 17 consecutive days where we were walking 200 miles because we started in Leon, Spain. And
Yeah.
I was crushed. Everything about this trip. I mean, I didn't have it planned out like what was going to happen each day, other than we were starting in a certain city and going to the next. And that was
Yeah.
it. Whatever was going to unfold was going to unfold, and that was out of my control. Such is the case with the conditions that we walked in on the second and third day that literally had my feet so raw I couldn't stand.
Yeah.
And I I literally had to cab it from city to city for the next 2 days because I was
Yeah.
such bad shape.
Yeah.
And this was sort of the irony, because I had a torn meniscus in my right knee earlier that year, and I had surgery, arthroscopic surgery on my right knee a month before, going on this trip. And I was so concerned about my knee. And the irony is, it was nothing to do with my knee; it was all
Nothing.
my.
Yeah.
And so that was the challenge. And I had to really, from that moment, shift my mindset about what this trip meant to me and what I wanted to get out of it, because it was the rug was pulled out from underneath my feet, if you will.
Yeah.
And I just I let everything go when I was reliant on road transport, for 2 days to try to heal, and left behind and let the others go, and not speaking the language, with any fluency. It was a challenge. There was a lot of emotional, components that came up, and I felt somewhat defeated. Um, and yet then I also, in that feeling, I tried to remain open to the message and the learning that I was supposed to get from this, that wasn't part of my agenda and my rational thinking at the onset.
Right. Right.
That's that's
That
the beauty of any adventure.
well, heck yeah. I mean, really is, adventure. And we introduced, it's actually, I think in chapter 3, we talk about the concentric circles of comfort. And, the first being, the comfort zone where everybody is secure and they feel fine and there's nothing like that. And then, there's this circle that outside of that called the learning zone. And then that's where we're learning, things are different. We've got our radar up. And then there's a further out circle that we call the panic zone. And I can imagine just what you said right there, that you were like going way into that panic zone. Like I said, you're in a foreign country, you don't speak the language, you're hurt, and you've got other people out there that are counting on you to degree. Really, really tough situation. How did you pivot that back and get back in once you got healthy?
Um, honestly just focusing on the simplicity of making the intentional decision of taking this journey to begin with,
Yeah.
and being grateful and appreciative for that. And just literally dropping the hold, the grip that I had, about what I wanted to get for myself. And I felt like it took me back to my trip to India in some ways, where that was even, that was I said 2019, where I had no expectations and I had just epiphanies during that trip. And I figured I need to let go. And so that's really what helped to facilitate and navigate for me the rest of the trip.
Yeah.
And to know that I met so many amazing people on the walk from all
Yeah.
over the world. And the one thing you asked me about what I did to prepare, and it was interesting. I spent more time thinking about, do I want to have a pack on my back the entire time for everything that I need, or do I want to do, which was the authentic way? Sort of this whole debate about what's the authentic way to do the Camino. And you'll hear
Yeah.
every story out there. And that was my biggest hang up. Do we want to do a pack, or do we want to have a transport service, which is,
Right.
there's no shame in that, of having, amenities that you want for your travels, but you don't want on your back all day while you're walking. And we opted for the transport service. And so I spent more time in the planning in that regard, as silly as it may sound, because this to me was such a big commitment to take this trip, to include my daughter. The money that I garnered to do this came by selling stuff on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace for a year. So $4,000 of what I spent on the trip was
Right.
derived from stuff, my stuff, friends' stuff they didn't want anymore. And it was just, again, hard, going back to the level of being grateful to be away and to do it with a sense of abandonment and lack of concern for the finances. Like, I had already been at a level of loss and change. And pardon me, I'm like, what else is there? What else can happen? So I think the physical limitations got me back into a deeper emotional and spiritual and mental, connection to the trip that was needed, that I didn't maybe have enough connection to at the onset.
Right. Right. Well, let me ask you this. I mean, what an amazing experience. And, adventure, I've heard said, sometimes adventure can be cold and a little bit painful and a little bit, you wish you kind of knew it. But the greatest thing about adventure, when those things happen, is when it's over and you get the time to reflect back on it and you know that you lived a grand adventure. But let me ask you this. How do you bring that feeling, that sense of energy, that sense of accomplishment, the sense of adventure? How do you bring that, into your daily life? How do you do that specifically?
Well, that's I don't how do I bring it? I bring it in by not bringing stuff in. And by that, I mean, I'm pretty much a minimalist in many ways. I have a deep level aesthetics, as you mentioned. I am an artist, I'm a designer. I love spaces, I love creating them for other people, but I'm not about filling my life with stuff. I'm about filling my life with experience.
Yeah.
And for me, my daily routine or commitments or things that, keep me going are related to my plans for travel or a sense of adventure. Whether it's significant or even the small stuff, are what am I not expending resources on that will then allow me something in the bigger, more profound picture.
Yeah.
So
That's a
that's
big part of this as well. And we talk about it in the book. Adventure, embracing adventure is part of your daily life. It doesn't just happen. You don't just wake up one day and say, "I'm going to be adventurous." It takes the commitment, and you have to. We say this in the book. You have to allot time for this, because if you don't, the world catches up with you and it goes by, and you sit around all day in the comfort zone.
Mhm.
So I get what you're saying, from focusing your life towards those experiences. It's something that we embrace, profoundly, with my company and the coaching stuff that we do here. Do Let me ask you this: we introduce a concept in the book, and it's a concept that we call the mini quest, and it's a fancy word for what I call my attempt at embracing adventure as part of my daily life. And like I said, you got to make time for this. And typically, my time, and everybody has their best on this. Each of my days, or most of my days, will start off with a early morning, kind of before the sunrise, type of walk. And the whole concept of mini quest being really curiosity.
Mhm.
It's not just a walk. It's a walk that is approached with a purpose, and that purpose is to learn and to drive on that. What are your thoughts on that? Is that something that you would ever do, or have you ever thought about that, or how do you do it? How do you make time for adventure?
I fully concur with your method and approach to those those stones, if you will, those, connect the dots in the daily, and routine, and thinking about your experience, a walk or whatever, and your relationship and association to the space that you're experiencing, and that bringing a value and enhancement and enlightenment to your, your day. I think there's value and need for that, and I strive to do that every day. I mean, would I love to be jetting somewhere, from to
Right.
and then starting the adventure? Absolutely. And the reality is that for many of us, and myself included, I'm not in a position to do the grandeur of things,
Right.
with as much consistency as I would like. But to your point, the daily, I strive daily in seeing the beauty and the grace in where I am and what I have and how I'm relating to it.
Yeah.
And that fuels me. It keeps me in a place of contemplation in a good way, and openness, and that sort of flexibility of like constantly having a level of self-evaluation, and determining, what's important to me in order to facilitate these other, grander, bigger vignettes in life, that, that
Right.
be travel.
Yeah,
uh
absolutely. And we're very, very transparent in the fact that adventure, it doesn't have to be a physical type of activity at all.
no.
Adventure is about getting out of the routine. And whether it's, ordering something new off the menu, driving to work a different way, or, bringing a learning component into your life, whether, if you like cooking or art or music or those type of things. Adventure can be any and all of those. And we try and I guess induce that feeling with people that are maybe not so much into the activity side of things.
But I think when you engage in things, or planned or not, I think when it's done with a level of purpose and intention, there's a deeper association. And when there's a level of reverence to, the opportunity, whether it's like you've been somewhere and you enjoyed this meal, and it's, part of that culture or whatever, and wanting to create that at home. I mean, those are like the elements, that kind of, keep your own personal adventure alive, on a daily
Yeah.
basis, for sure.
Yeah,
um
absolutely.
you know
Absolutely.
and of course, like many, my life, I say, exists on my phone with the pictures, and I love looking through my pictures, and it kind of jazzes me and fuels me for the next plan. I was just on the phone with my daughter yesterday, thinking, she's in college now and she's in a different phase of her life. I'm thinking, you know where should we go next? I'm already, I'm trying to garner her, time and attention. And we've talked about doing the Camino again.
Yeah.
Um, Actually, it's interesting. She was a little resistant of the trip initially, and she's like, what did I get myself into and all? And then she got into the groove and just realized the profound experience that she was having. And no sooner we got to Santiago, she was, I think I want to do the full 500 miles at some point.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
So that
It's
as a parent to give that
yeah.
was monumental. And the trip happened when she was 16, and I remember having an experience in my life, my first international travel at 16. I was given a trip to go to Israel for 6 weeks, and so it was just kind of this neat parallel, if you will, that with regard to age and stage in life. And so uh
Bringing your children into this is the greatest thing you can do. I have a 19-year-old son as well. And, since he was little, we've planned every year a grand expedition. It's just, and seeing them and how it impacts them is the greatest adventure for any parent that could
it is.
possibly exist.
It is, and I've never been indulgent with gifts and material things, and my secondhand shopper, all that stuff, and it's always been with the premise, not from a sense of lack, but with a sense of intention of where can my resources go to kind of enlighten and fulfill me in another way. And I've sort of transferred a lot of that thought onto my daughter, and so I told her, I said, I'd rather give you an experience than something, than a thing, if you
Yeah,
will. So
no
that's
doubt
really
about it.
also that drives a lot of my, decision making through the days and the years.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. And for our readers, they probably don't know this, but I am traveling right now as well, and I'm in Spain. And what made, some of this even come about is I was in Leon, Spain, and
Yes,
I had posted something, and Kim had said, oh my gosh, that's where we started the Camino. And of course, we see the walkers it was every day, and you
yes.
see the signs. And it was really funny because my girlfriend Samantha, she's like set. She's ready to come back and do it.
Oh,
Uh,
that's you definitely definitely should. Yes, yes.
yeah,
Well, we stayed at the monastery there in Leon, was
right.
our night there after
Yeah.
leaving Madrid. Yeah.
Super, super fun. Well, listen, Kim, we've got to wrap it up here. Thank you so, so much. What a great story. What an amazing life. And being able to embrace adventure and bring it into your life like that. And it's just a great story hearing that. I hope the readers enjoyed it. And I'll be in touch with you for sure. And thanks for being part of Outrunning the Light.
Oh, thank you for including me, Todd. And I'm excited for your journey, and I enjoy watching and following you. And I hope the readers embrace you as well as I have.
Thank you, darling. We'll see you later. Bye bye now.
Take care, Todd. Bye bye.